Number 10. Gustav the Crocodile. Perhaps no animal on Earth is more feared than Gustav the Crocodile. Crocodiles are some of the most fearsome animals on the planet, with a history of about 100 million years on Earth. They have survived extinction events, cataclysms, and plenty of natural disasters, and they are still the top predators in their territories. They are also still a threat to mankind. But Gustav is a threat unlike any other. He is allegedly between 65 and 100 years old, making him in his man-eating prime. Gustav is also over 18 feet in length and has apparently eaten at least 300 people in the African country of Burundi. That's right, 300 people. Burundi is one of the 5 poorest countries in the world, and to make matters worse, they have Gustav the killer crocodile eating people left, right and centre. He became widely famous in 2004 during a documentary in which a herpetologist tried to capture him, of course to no avail. Gustav had apparently been in a firefight with police, but even bullets were not enough to bring him down. The herpetologists stood no chance of catching him, and he never did. There are some who believe the croc was killed in 2019, but there's no definitive proof. Gustav could still be haunting the rivers of Burundi, eating people whenever the mood strikes. He has shown no sign of slowing down, and he could go on killing for another 20 years or more until he simply perishes of old age or tires of eating human flesh. Number 9. The Man-Eaters of Tsavo. It's time to meet the most notorious wild lions in the history of the Earth. These are the Man-Eaters of Tsavo, and they have a legend that will probably never be outmatched. It all started in 1898 when a pair of lions began terrorizing construction crews building a railroad bridge over the Tsavo River. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, historical estimates placed the death toll at 135 people. One worker from the railway wrote that hundreds of men fell victims to the savage creatures whose very jaws were steeped in blood. That is a pretty intense statement. The railroad bridge was a project put forth by the British colonial government, and apparently it ended up being a death sentence to many of the men who worked on it. Unfortunately, the man-eating lions were actually killed by a lieutenant colonel named John Henry Patterson. He then sold their bodies for $5,000 to the Field Museum in Chicago, where visitors are still able to feast their eyes upon these killer lions. And even though they were supposed to have eaten 135 people, a zoologist with the museum named Bruce Patterson claims that it was likely much less. They probably only ate about 35 people. After doing chemical tests of hair samples from the preserved lions, the zoologist was able to determine that they had indeed eaten mass amounts of human flesh in the days and weeks before they were killed. However, Patterson estimated that one lion only ate 10 people, while the second lion ate about 24. It's still a horrifying number, but not quite as disturbing as the original estimates. What's really interesting is that today, the lions in the Tsavo region are still the most bloodthirsty in the world. They will attack people for just about any reason and are especially dangerous when injured. This is not a place where you want to run into a wild cat. Number 8. Rampaging Elephant. Elephants have always been known to have a violent side to them. But there was one elephant who went on a mad rampage through an Indian town and damaged over 100 buildings, shops, and homes. These massive creatures can do a lot of damage if they want to. And there's nothing worse than something with such a destructive force being aimed directly at your town. This happened a few hundred miles from Kolkata, when the elephant allegedly strayed from the rest of its herd, got lost, and ended up strolling right into town. The elephant then proceeded to knock down about 100 houses and destroy vehicles as it expressed its rage in the street. People threw stones at the elephant to try and drive it away, but that clearly didn't work. Eventually, forest officials showed up and filled the lunatic beast with tranquilizer darts to get it under control, and then they had to use a special crane to lift the animal out of the town. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the elephant's fault. After all, it was the people who built their city in the elephant's territory. Luckily, nobody was killed during the animal's outburst, but a lot of people definitely had to do some rebuilding. Number 7. The Brown Bear of Sankebetsu. The Sankebetsu bear incident of 1915 created the most legendary brown bear in history. If you thought bears were scary already, wait until you meet the most feared bear to have ever lived. It all went down during the First World War. But while the Japanese were fighting military battles abroad, off the coast of Hokkaido Island, inhabitants were fighting a battle of their own. A massive Ussuri brown bear had awoken from its hibernation early, hungry and eager to eat. The bear proceeded to go on a killing spree that would mar the island for the rest of time. The bear attacks began in late November, except that the bear didn't attack first. The local villagers managed to shoot the animal after spotting it 3 times. They followed the trail of blood up to the local mountain, but couldn't catch the animal, and they assumed the bear would then leave them alone. But after a week of healing, the bear reappeared with a vengeance. The bear entered the house of a random family, attacked and killed a baby, then dragged the mother outside and mauled her to death. 5 men tracked the bear, shot at it, but it escaped yet again. At this point, the village was in a total panic. There were about 50 guards deployed in the village to keep watch for the marauding bear. But despite the security detail, the bear managed to sneak past, get inside another house, and maul everyone inside before kicking open the front door and attacking the guard who had come to investigate the noises. In total, the bear killed several children, a pregnant woman, and a guard in just one night. And then he escaped again into the wilderness. Unfortunately for the bear, a search party of about 60 men, joined by experienced snipers, crept up the mountain and killed him in his sleep. When measured, the Japanese found he was 749 pounds and almost 9 feet tall. Number 6. The Jersey Shore Man-Eater. The most feared shark in history lived just off the coast of New Jersey. It was responsible for a string of attacks in 1916 that would bolster its place in history. Between July the 1st and 12th, 4 people were killed and 1 person was injured by a rampaging shark. This was during the same summer in which a deadly polio epidemic had broken out in the United States. Thousands and thousands of people had been driven to seaside resorts to escape the epidemic. Unfortunately for them, the Jersey Shore Man-Eater was on the prowl. On July 14th, just 2 days after the latest attack, a taxidermist from Harlem caught a 7.5-foot shark while fishing off the coast of New Jersey. The shark was so huge and so vicious that it nearly knocked the guy's boat over before he managed to stab it to death with a broken oar. When the shark was taken back and the guts were removed, the man discovered a suspicious material inside its stomach, which he later identified as being human remains. It looks like he caught the Jersey Shore Man-Eater. After July 14th, the attacks stopped altogether. Number 5. Tilikum the Whale. Tilikum was a killer whale in every sense of the word. This monstrous beast of the ocean was involved in at least 3 human fatalities during its 25 years at SeaWorld, including a trainer from SeaWorld in 2010. You may also remember this whale from the hit CNN documentary Blackfish. In January 2017, the notorious and feared orca whale finally passed away at around 35 years of age. SeaWorld had reported just a few months earlier that the orca was likely dying. It's always sad when an animal dies in captivity, but there's no denying that Tilikum was a murderer. The whale killed Dawn Brandshaw in 2010 when he pulled her underwater by her ponytail and drowned her in front of an audience. The whale was so aggressive that rescuers were unable to get into the tank and save the woman's life. But even more disturbing is that Tilikum had been linked to at least 2 other homicides. He and 2 other whales were involved in the cold-blooded drowning of another marine trainer in the province of British Columbia back in 1991. She too was dragged underwater and drowned in front of park visitors. As for the final death, Tilikum is blamed for murdering a man in 1999 who hid inside SeaWorld after it closed and then climbed into the whale's tank. You might call this self-defense, so you can't entirely blame the whale for killing someone who broke into his house. But at the end of the day, there's no denying that Tilikum had taken 3 lives and was one of the most feared whales in history. Number 4. The Cobra that killed Cleopatra. Cobras are not exactly cute and cuddly. While there could have been a serial killer cobra at some point in history, today we're looking at the infamous cobra that allegedly killed Cleopatra. So far as the story of Cleopatra's death goes, she and her lover, Mark Antony, were decimated in battle in 31 BC and forced to retreat to the city of Alexandria. Then, when the Roman army came to their city gates, Mark Antony fell on his sword and Cleopatra apparently allowed a poisonous snake to bite her 2 handmaidens and then herself. But is this historically accurate? If so, the cobra involved in the fatality would be the most notorious snake in the world. It would be the snake that killed the majestic Queen of Egypt. However, everything is so vague when it comes to Cleopatra. She fictionalized most of her life to be as dramatic as possible, and according to History.com, there is no solid evidence about how she died, whether by the bite of a cobra or by some other means. The whole account could just be a fictional story. We may never know the truth of how Cleopatra died, or if a snake was even involved. Number 3. The elephant, Osama bin Laden. It seems pretty rude to nickname an elephant Osama bin Laden. And yet, that's exactly what the fearful villagers in India named a rogue elephant after it allegedly killed 14 people in the region. Osama bin Laden evaded capture twice, it killed as it saw fit, and it became one of the most feared elephants in the history of India. This happened back around 2006, and a wildlife ranger was called in to deal with the situation. It was eventually shot and killed, but to this day, some people claim the hunter killed the wrong elephant. Just 2 years after the death of the original Osama bin Laden, yet another rogue elephant cropped up near Jharkhand and caused at least 11 fatalities and over a dozen injuries. Osama bin Laden is now synonymous in India with killer elephants. Number 2. The Beast of Gevaudan. The Beast of Gevaudan is one of the most mysterious and feared animals that has ever roamed the earth. It's also one of the oldest ones on the list. Between 1764 and 1767, the Beast of Gevaudan terrorized France. According to History.com, around 100 men, women, and children fell victim to the malicious monster. And while original accounts claimed it to be a giant wolf, it may not actually have been a wolf at all. Some people even believed that there was more than one beast at work. The entire country of France was terrified of the creature, and King Louis XV ended up dispatching hunters to try and capture whatever was plaguing the country. There was a massive bounty put on the creature's head, and in 1765, a man named Francois Antoine shot a very large wolf and collected the reward. But this ended up being a farce. Attacks started again later, but the royal court ignored all claims that the beast was loose. A hunt was eventually organised without the king, and an even larger and more fearsome animal was discovered and killed on the mountain slopes, and inside its belly were found human remains. But to this day, no trace of the mysterious Beast of Gevaudan remains. Nobody has any idea what kind of animal it was. Accounts from the 1700s claim it was not like any wolf ever seen before, and so it could have been some kind of strange canine-like animal that went extinct hundreds of years ago. It could even have been a dire wolf. Number 1. The Leopard of Panar. The Leopard of Panar is one of the most feared cats of all time. It was a male leopard that lived in India near the beginning of the 20th century and allegedly killed at least 400 people. The leopard was apparently injured, and so it was unable to hunt wild animals to survive. In order to keep living, the leopard began to hunt people. And let's be honest, if a person doesn't have a gun or a large sharp stick, they make for pretty easy hunting, even by a wild cat. The leopard's reign of terror only lasted for so long. It was eventually shot by a man named Jim Corbett in 1910. It took him a few tries to do it, but eventually he did manage to shoot the wounded animal and put an end to its human feast. As a bonus bit of knowledge, even though leopards are quite small compared to lions and tigers, they are often considered the most dangerous cats. Some hunters even claim that leopards are about 10 times more dangerous than lions, mostly because of their stealth, speed, and savage ability to kill. Number 10. The tree goats of Morocco. Goats are adorable. Have you seen the pictures of them in pajamas? Or heard about goat yoga classes? We've all seen goats in precarious situations. These animals have an uncanny way of climbing just about anything. But there's a huge difference between goats that can climb up cliffs and goats that can actually climb up trees. There are groups of goats in Morocco that are better tree climbers than just about any 12-year-old that you know. Specifically, goats in Morocco climb the argania tree, which is a gnarled and thorny tree with crooked branches and rough bark. These trees look like the last thing anyone would want to climb, and yet they attract goats like crazy. If you ever journey into southwestern Morocco, you can find these goats relaxing high up in the trees on extremely thin branches. And it's not just one either, there are often dozens of goats all congregated inside of the tree, seemingly for no reason. They just like to hang out there. It's one of the most bizarre things you'll ever see. But of course, the goats do have a reason for climbing. They venture up in the trees to eat the fruit. They then spread the seeds all over the ground because they're messy eaters, allowing for more trees to bloom in the future. It's all about the circle of life. Number 9. Sheep-eating plant. If you were forced to name one carnivorous plant, it would probably be the Venus flytrap, right? That's obviously the most well-known plant that has evolved to eat live animals. But did you know that outside of the swampy areas where the spectacular Venus flytrap lives, there is a spiky, tropical plant that is able to eat sheep? It's known as Poya chilensis, and it's a native plant from the mountains of Chile. However, for the first time in 15 years of trying, horticulturists in England have managed to make them bloom. That's right, there are sheep-eating plants now blooming in England. But how do these prickly plants actually eat sheep? Well, according to popular science, they are not technically carnivorous like other plants, as they don't digest animal matter. Instead, the spikes on the rather sharp plants work to trap animals that pass by with thick fur, such as sheep. The unlucky sheep then starves to death, falls to the ground, and gradually decomposes. When the sheep decomposes, it becomes food. All those yummy sheep nutrients then seep into the soil, and the sheep-eating plant gobbles them up through its root system. Again, it's all about the circle of life. Hey, real quick, if you're new to checking out the channel, welcome. Go ahead and give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. The biggest lily pad ever. Lily pads are some of the coolest and strangest parts of nature, but nothing is quite as strange as the Victoria amazonica, the largest water lily in the entire world. This massive and lovely lily pad was first discovered in 1801 in Bolivia. As you probably already guessed, the world's giant lily pad can be found in the shallow water basins of the Amazon River. It also goes by the name the giant water lily. But just how enormous is the biggest lily pad in the world? Well, it's big enough for you to sit on. The giant water lily is about 10 feet in diameter, with a submerged stalk that can be up to 26 feet in length. It's also strong enough for a person to sit on. They kind of resemble giant green Reese's cups. Unfortunately, you won't see any giant monstrous frogs hopping from lily pad to lily pad. These are more like flowers, painted red underneath their leaves with sharp spines so that the fish don't eat them. Other than just looking incredibly cool, they don't really do anything else. But they are definitely weird. Number 7. Firefly Squid. Perhaps one of the strangest and most fascinating things that occurs in nature is bioluminescence. There's nothing more striking than an animal or plant that literally glows like a nightlight. Each year between March and June, there is a dazzling spectacle off the coast of Western Japan in which you can actually view the firefly squid floating near the surface of the ocean. These magical looking squids glow bright blue, and it's a sight unlike any other. They often wash up on the beach, creating a luminescent blue, almost purplish glow across all of the shore. But what's even cooler is how these animals produce their light. They actually have 3 different organs inside their bodies that make them glow. Then they have 5 smaller light organs found around each of their eyes. Oh yeah, and don't forget the hundreds of tiny photophores on the skin of the squid, which produces green and blue light. When all these organs are lit up, you have a glowing squid that looks like a tiny alien monster going to a rave. Number 6. The Headless Camel. When it comes to a list of strange things in nature, you would think a headless camel wandering around would without doubt be on it. We've all heard of the Headless Horseman, but nobody has ever heard of the Headless Camel. And yet one has been caught on camera standing in the middle of the sweltering desert in India, completely without a head. A photographer had been visiting the beautiful Jaisalmer desert with his family when he happened upon the Headless Camel. At first, the photographer was probably pretty shocked, but as you can imagine, it is actually impossible for a camel to walk around without its head. Not only that, but you can definitely tell by the picture that the animal doesn't even have a neck to hold up a head. That's just not realistic. How can this be real? Well, sorry to burst your bubble, but the truth here is that it was all just an illusion. The photographer took the picture at the exact right time to make the camel appear as though it had lost its neck and head. But what really happened is that the camel was simply turning its head the other way, and it managed to turn its head at such a sharp angle that it vanished to the other side of its body. According to the photographer himself, he had about 5 seconds to snap the perfect photo before the camel finally turned around and looked at him, miraculously regrowing its head. Talk about camouflage! Number 5. Rainbow trees. Did you know that there are trees in Australia the colour of the rainbow? The trees are known as rainbow eucalyptus trees, and when they shed their bark, they almost look like coloured pencils with the skin shaved off. The rainbow eucalyptus tree can grow to be over 250 feet tall, with multicoloured bark and fragrant leaves that are a favourite of hungry koala bears. But what makes this tree become so colourful? This doesn't seem like something that should happen naturally in nature, right? Apparently, when the tree begins to shed, it first reveals its inner bark, which happens to be green. But over time, the bark changes colour. As the tree ages, its inner bark turns blue, orange, purple, and maroon. The older the tree is, the more beautiful its bark. Different layers fall off, other layers stay on, and what you get is a spectacular visual that looks like something out of Alice in Wonderland or a Dr. Seuss book. And don't worry, if you want to see rainbow trees for yourself but don't want to fly to Australia, they can be found planted in botanical gardens throughout Texas, Louisiana, and even in Southern California. Number 4. Honduran white bats. Let's take a look at another very strange animal found in nature. This is the Honduran bat, also called a Caribbean white tent making bat. As the name would suggest, the bat is found primarily in Honduras, but it can also be found in Panama, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. These bats are pretty rare to see. It was first discovered in 1898, but 60 years went by before it was seen again in 1963. Out of all 1,300 species of bat, the Honduran white bat is only one of 3 that has perfectly white fur. The bat also has bright yellow nose shaped like a leaf and bright yellow ears. It truly is a striking animal to look at. But what you're probably wondering is why it's called the tent-making bat. According to Fact Animal, it gets its name because of how it builds tents out of plant matter that it finds throughout the night. The bat cuts the plants carefully with its teeth to form a small structure for it to hide in, sometimes in groups of up to 15 cuddling together in one plant tent. They roost inside the plant tent all throughout the day until the night, when it then goes out and scavenges for fruit. Number 3. The never-ending wave. Some surfers spend their entire lives searching for the perfect wave. But what nobody knows is that deep in the Amazon jungle of Brazil, there is a very strange natural occurrence known as the never-ending wave. Each year, around the spring equinox, a single giant wave surges from the Atlantic Ocean down the Amazon. It is the perfect place to surf, considering the wave is literally endless and stretches on for hundreds and hundreds of miles. When you're dealing with a wave in the ocean, you usually only get to ride it for about 15 to 30 seconds. This is according to a professional Brazilian surfer named Sergino Laus, who first started visiting the endless wave back in 2000. But the endless wave in Brazil, known as pororoca, is a tidal bore that can reach up to 15 feet in height and goes on basically forever, allowing you to surf for as long as you can. The wave is so intense that it has been known to break trees in its path and cause all kinds of mayhem. It's also located in a region thick with jaguars, deadly serpents, and even red-bellied piranhas. You can definitely surf the endless wave to your heart's content, but one wrong move could have you swarmed by deadly man-eating fish. Number 2. Turned to stone. Here we have another strange body of water. But unlike the endless wave in Brazil, Lake Natron in Tanzania is not really a place you want to enter. It's one of the strangest, most serene lakes in all of Africa, and it's filled with the petrified remains of animals who were silly enough to try and take a bath in it. This lake literally turns animals into stone. According to Live Science, Lake Natron has a pH level of around 10.5, which means it's so caustic that it could burn your skin and eyes just by taking a short dip. The lake is surrounded by hills, and it has no way of draining other than evaporation. This means that over the past few thousand years, chemicals have built up on the bottom of the lake. It is so full of chemicals that when a regrettable bird accidentally flies into the water, it gets trapped and dies. But then the body becomes petrified. The petrified bodies of all these dead birds eventually wash ashore, where they can be ogled at by tourists. The point is that even though the lake may look beautiful, it's a strange death trap crafted by Mother Nature herself. You better stay out. Number 1. Webbed trees. It's bad enough when you find a spider web in the corner of your bedroom, or heaven forbid in the shower. But there is a place in Pakistan where millions of spiders encased full trees in webs, making the solo web in your shower look like nothing but a stray hair. It's the most horrifying thing you'll probably never witness in real life, and I doubt anyone's too shook up about that. According to Wired, it all happened in 2010 when there was an unprecedented flooding in the country of Pakistan. The flooding disrupted the lives of at least 20 million people, and it also affected the spiders. Considering the floodwaters were coming and there was nothing the spiders could do, they ended up climbing into the trees to escape. The result of this mass exodus was that the trees in the region of Pakistan became cocooned in millions and millions of spider webs. If you were to shake one of the branches, you would have hundreds and even thousands of spiders falling all over your head and onto your clothes. And now that I've succeeded in creeping everyone out, it's time to end the video. Number 10. Sloth bear. When talking about the deadliest animals in Asia, you can't skip over the sloth bear. Sloth bears aren't exactly cute and cuddly. They have shaggy, dusty black coats, and they can grow 5 to 6 feet long. They stand 2 to 3 feet high at the shoulder and weigh on average a whopping 200 to 300 pounds. Sure, grizzlies and black bears can be pretty terrifying in North America, but their Asian counterparts are just as vicious. For example, take the recent story reported in India Today, in which a farmer was mauled to death and eaten by a rogue sloth bear. It happened in a remote village in India when the farmer apparently ventured off into the woods on his property by himself. It's not clear what exactly happened, but the farmer's body was later found partially eaten and horribly disfigured. Then, another person was also attacked by a bear in the same area, probably the same one, who now has a taste for blood before it was put down by the authorities. This is how dangerous Asian bears can be. But of course, it's not totally their fault. Sloth bears are endangered and protected under the Wildlife Protection Act, and yet, because of the depletion of their habitat and a serious food shortage, they are forced to move closer and closer to where humans live, which often results in these types of deadly encounters. Can't blame the sloth bear for being hangry. Number 9. Indian red scorpion. There are a lot of scorpions found all throughout the world, but the one scorpion considered to be the most lethal on the entire planet is actually found in Asia. I'm talking about the Indian red scorpion, which actually isn't completely red. It's often a reddish brown or even an orange brown colour. And even though the Indian red scorpion doesn't actively hunt humans, it will definitely give you a nasty sting if you get too close. The scorpion can be found throughout Sri Lanka, India, and even Nepal, and it's pretty small. They only grow to be about 2 or 3.5 inches in length, and they have a thick tail with a bright red knot at the end where the stinger is. If this thing were to sting you, you would immediately experience symptoms of pain, vomiting, and sweating. Once the venom is in your cardiovascular system, you can die from pulmonary edema. What's even scarier about this is the anti-venom is almost never effective. Many people suffer allergic reactions from the venom and go into anaphylactic shock. They are small, but deadly. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Komodo Dragon. Scorpions are horrifying because they are small and venomous, but Komodo dragons are horrifying for a whole different set of reasons. These are the biggest and most fearsome reptiles in the world, and they are only found in Asia. Specifically, Komodo dragons can be found in large numbers on Komodo Island in Indonesia. Due to the remoteness of its island, researchers didn't discover it until 1910. Following the discovery, it quickly became clear that it was an apex predator in its environment. These amazing reptiles demonstrate excessive power, especially with its long tail. On several occasions, researchers have witnessed the dragon knocking down grown deer with just a swipe of its tail, often breaking their legs in the process. They can be as big as 10 feet and weigh over 200 pounds. They have sharp teeth similar to sharks, venom that can kill a person within hours, and they are incredibly mean. Attacks on humans are pretty rare, but Komodo dragons have been responsible for several human fatalities in both the captivity and wild. According to data from Komodo National Park spanning a 38-year period between 1974 and 2012, there were 24 reported attacks on humans, 5 of them fatal. In a recent story from ABC News, it was reported that a single, unusually angry Komodo dragon terrorized an entire village in Indonesia. It happened while a park ranger was doing paperwork and a ferocious dragon slinked up the stairs into his hut inside the Komodo National Park and bit his ankle. When the ranger tried to open the beast's jaws, it then bit his hand. He ended up needing to be sewn up with 55 stitches, and 3 months later he was still suffering from the pain. If it hadn't been for his nearby friends hearing his screams of agony and getting him to the hospital in time, he could have died. The lesson here is that Komodo dragons are ferocious beasts, and apparently some of them have a taste for human flesh. Number 7. Man-eating tigers. Speaking of having a taste for human flesh, let's talk about the man-eating tigers in India. These are without a doubt the most ferocious and dangerous predators in all of Asia. North from the Bay of Bengal, inside the dense mangroves of the Sundarbans, there live a special breed of vicious tigers that has been known to kill around 50 people annually, as reported by the BBC. Of course, this is nothing compared to elephants that allegedly kill around 350 people a year. But it's still pretty awful. It's also probably a lot more painful to be mauled to death by a tiger. Inside this remote habitat is 70% of all remaining wild tigers in the world. There are around 3,000 of the beasts living here, and they are not afraid of humans in the slightest. But what's really fascinating is that not every tiger in this area is of course a man-eater. That would be pretty insane. According to a retired carnivore biologist with the Wildlife Conservation Society, there are only between 10 and 15 tigers in the Sundarbans that are persistent human predators. Still, it only takes 10 tigers to wipe out a small village. These are beautiful, strong, and sadly endangered animals, but also extremely deadly. Number 6. Slow loris. Try to think of the most dangerous primate in the world. I'll give you a second. Did you imagine a gorilla or some other large King Kong beast? If so, you would be wrong. One of the most dangerous primates also happens to be one of the smallest and one of the slowest in the world. The slow loris is not only among the rarest primates on our planet, diverging from African bush babies somewhere around 40 million years ago, but they are also incredibly poisonous. They live in Southeastern Asia, they have human-like hands with opposable thumbs, and they have a bite so lethal it can kill a man in just hours. As of now, there is no cure for the bite of a slow loris. In fact, scientists aren't even sure why the primate has venom. It's kind of insane considering the slow loris doesn't do anything except drink nectar and hang out in the trees. Despite everything, the slow loris secretes toxins in its saliva and in glands located on the inside of its arm. The slow loris will lick the venom from its arm, combining the toxins with its already dangerous saliva to create a double venom, according to a conservation biologist from Oxford Brookes University. Even though this primate is slow and small, a single bite would almost certainly lead to death. Number 5. The Banded Krait. The first snake on our list today is the Banded Krait, arguably one of the most venomous snakes in all of Asia. It's commonly found in India and throughout Southeast Asia, including Thailand, and you can recognize it immediately because of its black and yellow crossbands. There is no mistaking the Banded Krait for any other slithering serpent. It can grow to be nearly 6 feet long, has a broad head and mean, beady black eyes. It lives everywhere from dry forests to mangrove swamps. Banded Kraits also live everywhere from Bangladesh to Hong Kong, and they are absolutely deadly. Their venom contains neurotoxins that can be fatal to humans. But these snakes are deadly to other animals too. They're typically lazy during the daytime and would rather run away than fight. But if needed, the Banded Krait can definitely protect itself. It has been recorded biting and killing large types of cattle that ended up getting a little too close. A giant cow will die after 60 minutes of being bitten, whereas a human can die anywhere from between 30 minutes and 15 hours. Number 4. Asian Giant Hornet. In China, giant hornets are a serious concern. Just a few years ago, there was an Asian giant hornet attack that killed dozens of people and injured over 1,500. These are not the ordinary hornets you find buzzing around your picnic on a calm summer day. These are monstrous insects with venom able to destroy red blood cells, resulting in some cases of kidney failure and even death. According to an entomologist of the Southwest Biological Institute in Arizona, an even bigger problem than their toxicity is the allergic reaction that many people have to being stung. Much of the time, hornet attacks in China kill people because of a deadly anaphylactic reaction, resulting in a closed airway and sometimes even cardiac arrest. Here's some other scary facts. The Asian giant hornet is the biggest hornet species on the planet, basically like the mastiff of the wasp world. It's a mean little critter found all throughout East Asia and Southeast Asia, nearly 2 inches in size. Basically, the size of a human thumb. As for why the attacks in China happened, many experts blame it on increased urbanization, unusually dry weather, and increased vegetation. Essentially, climate change and habitat loss. Number 3. Coconut crab. The coconut crab is a very real monster. It's a beast of a crustacean that can grow 3 feet in length and is generally believed to be the biggest arthropod that lives on land. What's strange is that according to the Vintage News, scientists are now saying that coconut crabs may have been responsible for the unsolved disappearance of Amelia Earhart, the original female aviation pioneer. To understand more about this, let's look deeper into the coconut crab. The special animal has immense strength. It only weighs about 9 pounds, but can carry over 6 times its body weight. The coconut crab also has extremely strong pincers, which can exert almost as much force as the bite from a lion. And even though these crabs are so fierce, they primarily feed only on coconuts. They climb up the trees, knock the coconuts down, then use their strong pincers to break the coconuts open. However, coconut crabs will also kill birds inside of trees and drag them into their lairs. They will even eat corpses. She disappeared near Howland Island in the South Pacific, and her body was never recovered. Scientists are now saying that Amelia Earhart likely washed up on the beach, probably very badly injured, and then she was swiftly dismembered and probably eaten by a group of very rude coconut crabs. Number 2. Asiatic water buffalo. The water buffalo doesn't look inherently dangerous, unless of course you're lost in the jungle staring one straight in the eyes. They may look similar to cows, but you definitely don't want to try and milk one in the wild. Water buffalo are horrifying, and it's believed that they all originated in Asia. However, they were introduced throughout the years to Australia, Africa, and of course North America. The Asian water buffalo is actually an endangered species now, even after being domesticated by humans thousands of years ago. The water buffalo spends most of its time submerged in muddy water, keeping itself cool and enjoying being lazy. But water buffalo can be extremely dangerous. In Africa, the Cape buffalo is known as the Black Death because it kills nearly 200 people a year, including hunters. In Asia, water buffalo aren't quite as feared, but because of their huge bulk, they are a force to be reckoned with. They stand about 8 to 9 feet tall and can weigh over 2,500 pounds. It just takes one angry water buffalo to trample a fully grown man. Number 1. Asian elephant. Elephants are the biggest land mammals living on the planet. They're giants, weighing 6,000 to 9,000 pounds and standing 7.5 to 9 feet tall. But we often refer to them as gentle giants. The truth is that elephants are only gentle when they want to be. When they're in a bad mood, they can be violent forces of nature. Take for example the recent story of campers in Thailand that were woken up in the middle of the night when a wild elephant invaded their campground and killed an old man who was literally doing nothing except sleeping in his tent. According to the report from Asia 1, the elephant broke into the Phar Klua Mai camping ground in the dead of night, walked over the 80-year-old man's tent, grabbed him with its trunk, and then threw him so hard against a tree that the old man died instantly. The rest of the campers ran away to safety, and the elephant made off like a criminal. And this just goes to show that even in 2021, elephants are still the most dangerous animals in all of Asia. Thanks for watching. Have you ever seen one of these animals in real life? Let me know about your experience in the comments. Be sure to come back soon, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.